Hello and welcome to Fuck Your Opinion. This is a movie review show. Today I am reviewing White Tiger on Netflix. Or should I say the Indian remake of The Talented Mr. Ripley? Because that's kind of what this movie is. There is differences for sure, but if we're just looking at the framework of what this movie is and the I don't want to say the essence because that's a little bit wrong, but like I said, framework structurally to a degree and some of the things it's going for, this is very much Talented Mr. Ripley. And that's what I saw. I guess that about 30 minutes or so in, I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing. Okay. But we'll get to that in a bit. So, what is this movie? White Tiger. White Tiger is essentially about a man born in a low caste system who struggles to make his way out. He latches on to a rich family by becoming a driver for them, particularly the young son who studied in America and is more acclimated to American customs and cultures and ways. But for every instance, and I think this is a really interesting way the film goes about portraying the character, is every instance there is that this guy seems sympathetic and kind to the main character, he's also a complete asshole and a complete dick. There will be times where his father will be abusing, I'm just going to say the lead character because I don't remember his name, and I know I'm going to get it wrong if I try and pronounce it. But anyways, the father will keep abusing this servant, and then the son will be like, "No, you can't do that. That's wrong." And then in other scenes, he'll be like, "I wish you were thrown in prison. Fuck you." So it's interesting seeing that dichotomy between the two versions of himself and how hypocritical he can be. This film does a great job at really uglying every single character and condemning them all. So even the main character, who you kind of root for because he's in such a shitty situation, in which a lot of poor people in India are dealing with as the movie portrays, but he's in a terrible situation trying to work his way out of it. The way he does so is awful. He's not a good guy. He's not a good person. At the end of the day, I mean, he murders people. Well, no, sorry. He murders his boss. He's the only guy he murders, but he definitely doesn't have a whole lot of respect for life. Hell, I mean, at the very end, he pretty much knows that, so, spoiler alert. Well, I already spoiled it, didn't I? By saying he killed the boss. But again, Talented Mr. Ripley. You should know that. Talented Mr. Ripley. Oh, okay. So, also, Talented Mr. Ripley spoiler, I guess, if you haven't seen the movie. I got that one ruined for me. Someone ruined that for me before I watched the movie. So, you know what? If you're like, "Sean, you ruined Talented Mr. Ripley for you," you know what? Fuck off. I got ruined for me too. Watch the fucking movie. It's on Netflix or something. It's pretty decent. Anyways, at the end, the main character is reading through a newspaper and he's thinking about how the decision he made to essentially kill his boss and steal 4 million rupees pretty much condemned his entire family to death. And that is probably at least a dozen people in his family. So, yeah, you can understand the decision. You can, I don't know if the correct word is sympathize or empathize to a degree, because we all kind of get that feeling of, I am getting fucked by the rich. I hate how I'm treated. And again, he is treated very poorly in this movie. He's essentially framed for murder and they use that as an excuse to hang over his head. It's putrid what they do to him. But that doesn't really justify that decision. I can understand it. And it's that doesn't make me hate the guy completely. It just, again, no one comes out of this looking good. Even Priyanka Chopra, who is great in the movie as well. Actually, before I get into her, I just want to say that the lead two guys, so I'm looking at them right now, and I'm so sorry. I'm not even gonna say if I mispronounce them. I'm going to mispronounce them, not intentionally. I know how to pronounce my favorite Indian actor, Shah Rukh Khan. I know how to pronounce his name, even though it's technically Khan, not Khan, but I fuck it up all the time. Anyways, Adarsh Gaurav. I think I got that one okay. Please tell me that I fucked it up, because I'm sure I did. So that's the lead guy, and he's really great. And then we got Rajakumar Rao, who is the rich son character. And something to note that I think is really interesting about this movie is, as a fan of Indian films and Bollywood films, there is a distinction, by the way. There is a distinction. Bollywood being a subset of Indian films being the larger picture, Bollywood being a smaller part of it. Anyways, I love Bollywood movies, and you will, in the ones that I watch, the more populous mass consumption entertainment, it often will follow the rich kid, the rich guy, and whatever his love story is. And oftentimes that character will have a sidekick who is generally like the protagonist of this movie, who is kind of either a servant character or kind of like a lower caste, not necessarily said explicitly, but kind of implied. So it's interesting to see the reversals there in terms of who this film is following and exactly how it plays out. Because if we're going to go by Bollywood logic, this film upends a lot of that. So it's kind of subversive in that way. But at the same time, if we're going to compare it to more American films, then I don't think it's particularly subversive. And I don't think it's particularly strong. It has a lot of scathing attacks in terms of the caste system, and it has a lot to say. And I think that's all strong. And this movie was a very unnerving movie throughout, but as an overall piece. And again, this is I really need to stress, and you could fight me and say I'm incorrect about this, but this is an American film. Ava DuVernay and Priyanka Chopra produced it. While Priyanka Chopra is Indian and has worked in many Bollywood movies, the director is Ramin Bahrani. Again, I'm sure I mispronounced it, but he's an American filmmaker. And to his credit, I did not look up who directed this ahead of time, and I was 100% convinced that this was an Indian filmmaker, because there was just so many little things about it, like how it was shot, the cinematography of it just looked like so many modern day Bollywood movies, just in terms of how the digital camera was used, the framing, the shots, the lighting, just a lot of little things. And also, I'm not trying to mock Indian films right here, but Indian films often kind of do little weird things every once in a while. Now, granted, American films do that all the time, but I guess it's a cultural difference that sometimes I'll watch and be like, wait, where the fuck did that come from? And this movie also had a little bit of that. For example, and this is a negative. I think this is I don't know why he fucking did this, but anyways, when at the end, well, near the end, the main character is talking to his boss, and this is when we learn that the boss is carrying a red bag full of money every day. Main character is like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And boss is like, "Sure, yeah. What do you want to talk about?" And the main character says, after a little bit of a pause, "I want to bash your skull in and steal all your money." Couple seconds pause, and then the boss says, "Oh, I get it. You want to see your family." So it essentially implies that that bit before was in his head, which was not explicit at all. If you're going to do, well, first of all, if you're going to do one of those, "Oh man, this is what the character is thinking, this is not what's actually happening," then you really, really, really have to use camera, cinematography, editing, something to really portray that, where this movie kind of throws it in and side skirts it. And it's like, wait, what the fuck? You can't have your cake and eat it too. I understand the comment you want to say, but do it through the narration, which you've been doing the whole fucking time. Why would it not be the narration? Why would you throw away this inner thought kind of thing when you've never done it before and you never do it again? And if this were a sillier Bollywood movie, I would forgive it. But this is a film that takes itself very seriously, as it should. So that's a problem. You can't. It's such a small thing, but I think that is part of the problem with this movie. Is there's a lot of small things that kind of at first aren't really an issue, but add up over time. So, for example, the narration. We start with the main character. He's successful. He's looking cool. And he's like, "Let me tell you how I got here," which is a very common Bollywood trope, by the way. I often see times where, off the top of my head, Sultan is one I can remember. A lot of movies do it. A lot of Bollywood movies do that because structurally what they'll do is they do the beginning of like, here's the present day, and then whatever character is being introduced to this story is like, "Well, let me tell you how I got here. Let me catch you up to speed." So they go back in time and basically tell this character's life story for the first half of the movie. And that's about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes in the movie. Then we have an intermission. And then after the intermission, we're caught up to present day. And then we have the present day storyline. So in essence, what it should be and what it should have been is this entire movie, the first, I guess, an hour 45, which is the majority of it, should have lost about 40 minutes of it because they repeat things a lot. They repeat beats a lot. What I was saying earlier with the boss going back and forth between being a complete dick and being really nice and kind just happens far too many times, and it doesn't need to happen that many times. But anyways, it would have been far more interesting if that was the first half, then we get caught up to present day. So what is in essence the last 10 minutes or so of this movie ends up being a whole half of the rest of the movie. And then you can actually have a storyline as opposed to just a quick epilogue as to what happened to him. And it could be really interesting. A lot of times Bollywood movies will, and I need to stress, this is not a Bollywood movie. I know I'm making the comparison because it rides this very fine line between being an Indian movie and an American movie. I don't know what you'd really consider it. Because, for example, Slumdog Millionaire and Lion are American or at least Western movies, right? That take place in India. Both of which I absolutely hate and have a lot of problems with. Not going to get into it right now. But this, like I was saying before, just stylistically how it was approached and shot, and just a lot of the little Indian flourishes just makes me think that they at least approach some kind of authenticity with what they were going for, which I do applaud. Didn't 100% work, but I do applaud. But back to the structure. So a lot of times, like I was saying, with that second half of the Bollywood movie, you would have almost a totally different storyline. It could take elements of the first half, but you could really cut a lot of these movies in half and be like, this is like a two-parter movie, a two-parter episode, where this is just one elongated story that, again, it could have lost quite a bit of time, and I don't think really lost anything in it. The pacing, I think, was one of the weakest elements of the movie, because it started really strong, and then the more it wanted to repeat itself, particularly around the halfway point where Priyanka Chopra's character ends up accidentally running over a kid and feeling very guilty about it, as she should. So that's kind of where things heighten and escalate to the highest they have been, and that's where the movie was kind of at its best, because I didn't know what was going to happen, and it kind of terrified me. I'm like, oh my God, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to suffer the consequences of this? And that's where they really needed to do the scene in Talented Mr. Ripley. They needed to do the boat scene there, but they didn't. Instead, they waited another half an hour to do it and kind of meandered there. And meandering there really, really hurt it. Now, I don't know if that's what happened in the book, but that's what happened in the movie, and it stunk. I would also add that the narration is a major detriment to the movie, because particularly on reflection, in knowing that the main character really doesn't do anything till the end, it very much feels like a book adaptation, because while he takes some actions and he takes some steps throughout the movie, he's pretty fucking passive. The thing is, if you didn't have the narration, I don't know if the movie would make a whole lot of sense. And it needs the narration to work, but the thing is, the narration isn't complementing the movie like it needs to. It's not adding to it all that much. It's really telling you the specifics and the details that the movie itself should be telling you in one way or another, preferably through a little more nuance in terms of filmmaking. Which, again, I'm not trying to be critical, but that's something that in mainstream Bollywood movies often lack. So that's why, again, I thought this was a Bollywood movie. I'm like, oh, this would be a more common technique than nuance. God, I hate that I'm ragging on my favorite Bollywood movies, because Doom 2 for life, guys. If you haven't seen Doom 2, Doom 2 for life. Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham. I could just go on and on. I love Bollywood movies, guys. And again, this is not a Bollywood movie. I don't know. Again, I don't know what to call this, because it feels like an Indian film, and I want to say it, but it's an American filmmaker, and it's an American production, as far as I can tell, that just used a lot of Indian resources. So it's complicated. But back to this movie and the fucking narration, which is lazy. And then what I think really absolutely kills the narration is, and I wrote this quote, is what you have to realize is the main character is not narrating it to the audience. He's narrating it to a Chinese diplomat in an effort to essentially connect with him and hopefully invest in China or something like that. It's not, I don't want to say it's not particularly clear. I just don't remember. But the point is, in the final paragraph of this email, in which he admits he's a criminal on the run for murder and has actually been responsible for more than one death, he says, I would never say I made a mistake. Now, that is in regards to just the actions he's taken in his life, and he doesn't regret what he's done. But you can't help but find it a little ironic that you're saying, I can't say that I've made a mistake as I write down in email the confession of a murder. It's very stupid. And he links himself. The thing is, he's quote unquote anonymous right now, paying off the police, and theoretically no one knows that he is his former self, right? So the dumbest thing you could possibly do is try and connect 1 and 2 and leave a paper trail. It's so fucking dumb. It's so dumb. If this was a journal to himself, it would still be dumb, but it would at least make more sense than, again, sending an email. An email. That's super dumb. But then to a political official. Granted, it's not the same government, so it's not like he's going to be like, yo, let me just turn this motherfucker in. No, it's not going to happen, but it just boggles my mind, the stupidity of this guy. Particularly when he prides himself on being so fucking smart throughout the whole movie that he would do such a dumb thing. Last thing I'll say is Priyanka Chopra is great in this movie. Very small role, but she's great. Again, like the other guy though, she tries to purport herself to be, I'm great. I'm like a Mother Teresa. I am doing what's best for you. When in reality, she's still backstabbing and does what's best for her. And even though she might act like this guy, she's trying to save this guy, at the same time, she's really not. She's like a white girl going to Haiti on a mission trip, going like, let me just take the bricks, bang, 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 built a house, I'm a good person, guys, aren't I? When in reality, you actually probably caused more problems. Sorry, Priyanka Chopra, you did cause more problems because you decided to drunk drive and kill a kid. That's on you, babe. All right, I'm going to end this. White Tiger, I'd still say see it. It's pretty darn good, despite its numerous problems.